Hello, and welcome to the walkthrough training session on the Permanent Residence Portal for sponsorship agreement holders. My name is Serena Richardson, and I am an RSTP trainer located in the province of Ontario. There is a lot of information to share with you today, so I wanted to point out that there is a handout which provides some additional information that we will briefly mention but not be going into detail about today. In this handout, you will find a list of terms and definitions as it relates to the online portal, and a chart of the PR portal user roles and permissions. Also, you should know that during this training session, we will not be going over how to fill in the online application forms or explain how to submit a one-year window application. We will just be going over how to access the PR portal and what you can expect to see when you click on each navigation menu option. You can, however, find additional training videos on the RSTP YouTube channel under a playlist called Permanent Residence Portal Training Videos. In this playlist, you will find a video series that is specifically designed for invited group members that will show constituent groups and co-sponsors what they need to know about the PR portal, such as how to complete the online generic application and Schedule A, and where to upload the Schedule 2 and sponsors forms, as well as where to upload any supporting documents. A video on submitting one-year window applications can also be found there. When it comes to filling in the PDF forms that will need to be uploaded to the portal, such as the sponsorship undertaking form, sponsor assessment, and the PA Schedule 2 form, there is a playlist containing those tutorial videos and more called Completing the PDF Forms and Settlement Plan. Our agenda for today. As you can see, there is a lot to learn. We'll begin by explaining how to access the portal, followed by what you can expect to see on the dashboard listing of applications after you've signed in. Then we will take a look at the principal applicant's profile page, where you will provide basic information about the persons being sponsored. Then we will show you the group members page, where you can invite other parties to the sponsorship, such as your constituent group or co-sponsors, and where you will upload the sponsor's supporting documents. Next, we will move on to the application page to show you where the online generic application and Schedule A forms are to be filled in. And we'll show you where to upload the required PDF forms, as well as the principal applicant's supporting documents for the private sponsorship application. We will also discuss the automated emails you can expect to receive once you've submitted an application. And finally, we will explain what cannot be submitted via the PR portal. So with that understanding, let's focus our attention now on how to navigate and use the Permanent Residence Portal for submitting applications for the private sponsorship of refugees program. To access the Permanent Residence Portal, you can type in the web address in the browser URL field, or simply type PR Portal into Google to search for the PR Portal webpage. When the Google search listing appears, be sure to select the correct link. Do not make the mistake of selecting the link that is for immigration representatives. Once the web page opens, you will see the title and the description for the portal, and below that, you will have the option to sign into your account or to reset your password if you already have an account but have forgotten your password. And if you don't already have an account, you have the option here to create a new user account. Now, before we get into how to create a new user account, we need to talk about who the primary sponsor is and how to create your SAW primary sponsor user account when you have multiple staff and volunteers who will be working on applications for your SAW. When it comes to accessing the Permanent Residence Portal, a SAW may have multiple persons who will be working on applications. So it's important to understand that for a SAW, the primary sponsor is not going to be a specific person, but rather it refers to the organization as the primary sponsor. So when it comes to creating your SAW's PR portal user account, it's best to think of it as a user account for the organization and not an individual person. This is because the SAW can only have one PR portal user account and only one primary email address, which is used to create that permanent residence portal user account. Keep in mind that the primary email address used cannot be changed once the user account has been created. This is why you should not use an email address that belongs to a specific person. Let's take a look at why this is important. Similar to this example, your organization may have more than one person listed on file with IRCC as a main contact or signing authority. And in the past, each of those persons may have previously emailed applications to IRCC. So logically, you might think that each person should create their own user accounts for working in the PR portal. However, creating multiple user accounts for your SAW is not recommended. This is primarily because IRCC needs to verify that any applications received are coming from an authorized user account for the SAW. This is a security feature to prevent fraudulent submission of applications using your SAW name. I want to show you some other reasons why the SAW will only have one user account for submitting applications. In this example, Joe and Jane are listed with IRCC as a main contact and as a signing authority for their SAW. And each of these persons decided to create a user account for the portal using their own individual emails. Unfortunately, this was not a good decision for several reasons. The first reason is because Joe is only able to see the applications he has initiated. Similarly, Jane can only see the applications she has initiated. This becomes a problem when both persons need to be able to access all of the SAW's applications. Secondly, they weren't aware that if one of them leaves the SAW organization, the email address associated with their permanent residence portal user account cannot be changed. So no one else will be able to take over that user account and access those applications. Thirdly, and most importantly, they didn't realize that all of their submitted applications will be returned, since neither Joe or Jane's email address was specifically identified to IRCC as being the authorized primary sponsor for the SAW. So now you may be wondering which email address should be used for the primary sponsor and identified as such to IRCC. Well, it's recommended to not use the email address of a specific person, but instead to have a generic primary email address, which is used to create the SAW's primary sponsor user account for the permanent residence portal. It's a best practice to ensure that the generic email inbox can be accessed by multiple persons. You will also need to notify IRCC of that primary email address and then use it to create the SAW's permanent residence portal user account. That way, multiple staff will be able to log into that one permanent residence portal user account, and each person will have access to view all of the applications within the PR portal for your SAW. When a SAW wants to have more than one person access the PR portal using the SAW's primary sponsor user account, they are choosing to provide the sign-in information to each of their staff members and perhaps to specific volunteers who assist with preparing the applications for submission. When a person leaves their role as a staff or volunteer within the SAW, it is a best practice to change the password for the primary sponsor user account that they had access to. Keep in mind that each person who signs into the SAW primary sponsor user account will be able to access all applications. and they will have the ability to submit applications. So if you intend to have multiple persons signed into the one primary sponsor user account at the same time, a best practice is to ensure that each person is not working on the same application at the same time. Better yet, it might be best to have each person log in at different times to ensure that the data they have entered will be saved without any issues. Staff who sign into the SAW's primary sponsor user account will be able to invite group members and submit applications for the SAW. Keep in mind that invited group members can only access the applications they have been invited to. The principal applicant can also be invited to their online application as well, if desired. But this is not a requirement since the sponsors can input the online application information for them. For SAWs who do not want their volunteers to have full access to submit applications or to invite group members, they should not share the sign-in information for the primary sponsor user account. SAWs can instead create a temporary group member user account designated for volunteers to use so that they can work on any applications they have been invited to. Once they have finished filling the forms and uploading the documents, you would need to remove them as a group member before submitting the application. Any information typed into the forms by the volunteer or any PDF documents that they have uploaded will remain after their temporary access has been deleted. When you first create a user account, you will need to provide a working email address, which will be associated with your PR portal user account. Be sure this is an email address that you can check emails from regularly. Since some SAWs assist groups of 5 or community sponsors to understand how to fill out their forms, we will also be providing some information relevant to those users as well, so you can see the differences. Now, for a group of 5, they will need to provide a designated personal email address that they intend to use for communicating with IRCC. And please note that once a PR portal user account has been created, they cannot change the email address associated with this user account. The group of 5 should choose one person out of the group to be the primary sponsor, and that will be the person who creates the application for the group. For community sponsorship groups, they may want to create a designated organizational email address that they will use for all communications with IRCC, which will also be associated with a single primary user account in the portal. So for example, if the community sponsor organization's name was Lifeboat, then the email address to use for the primary sponsor could be sponsorships@lifeboat.org. Remember, you cannot change the email address associated with this user account once it's been created. When it comes to sponsorship agreement holders, as we mentioned, they will need to create a single primary sponsor user account. And the email address should match the one on file at IRCC for the SAW's primary email address. The SAW's primary contact email address should not be a personal email, but rather a designated email address that will be regularly used for the organization's private sponsorship communications. And it would be a best practice to use an email address that is not easily replicated or can be guessed by including a random series of numbers and letters. For example, something like this. The email address placed here cannot be changed after it has been created, which is why using a personal email account is not recommended. Next, you will need to choose a password that has a unique combination of letters, numbers, and characters. If your password does not meet any of the 6 parameters listed here, the missing requirement will not have a green check mark next to it. In this case, we do not have any special characters included in the password. Once You have entered a password that meets each of these requirements, click on the checkbox to indicate that you have read and accept the terms of use and privacy policy. Then, simply click on the Create Account button. You can now expect to receive an email that contains a unique verification code. Check your spam folder if you do not see it in your inbox. You will need to enter the code into this field in order to complete the user account registration. Once you've entered the verification code, click on the Complete Registration button. And if you have entered the code correctly, you will see a green confirmation box appear at the top of this page. Your user account creation is now complete. So you will be able to use the email address and password which you had chosen during this account creation process to log into the PR portal. Now, just as a reminder, if you are using Google to locate the link to access the PR portal, be sure you're selecting the correct link for private sponsors to access the PR portal, which is here. Do not click on this link, which is only for registered immigration representatives. Once the web page is open, you will know it's the correct one if you do not see the word representative here in this title. You can sign into your account by typing in the correct email address and password, and then click on the Sign In button. When this page opens, you will know that you're signing into your account because at the top right side, you will see your email address displayed here along with an option to sign out. This page is called the Dashboard page, which you can access by clicking on the My Applications menu item here. Once you've created a PSR application, you will see them listed here. Now, before we get into the details of creating an application, we need to talk about who should be creating an application. It's very important to understand that only the SAW is considered to be the primary sponsor. So only applications submitted from the SAW's PR portal account will be accepted by IRCC. Constituent groups and co-sponsors can only be invited to an application which has been created by the SAW primary sponsor user account. So even though a constituent group or co-sponsor may see the Create New Application button when they sign in to their own user account, it will only be used for creating other types of immigration applications, such as for community sponsorships or a group of 5, or even a family class application. The CG or co-sponsor should not attempt to create and submit a SAW application here because IRCC will not accept it since it was not created and submitted by the SAW organization. Keep in mind that your SAW allocations cannot be tracked within the permanent residence portal. You will still continue to track allocations using the current allocations tracking process that is in effect right now. Before we continue on to see a newly created application, let's take a closer look at the listing of applications which can be seen on this dashboard page after they've been created. As you can see, we have several applications listed in this example, and you should be aware of a few things when accessing your own listing of applications. As the primary sponsor, you will see a listing of all applications that you have initiated that are based on the email address associated with your particular portal user account, which should match the one on file with IRCC for the SAW's primary contact. Now, if you're a group member who has been invited to a single application, for example, you're a co-sponsor or a constituent group member, then you would only see that one application in your listing. However, if you've been invited to multiple applications, then you would see all of the applications you've been invited to, as long as you use the same email address for each application. If you had provided a different email address for some of the applications you were invited to, and you created a different portal user account for each one, then you would not see all of those applications in one place. Let's take a look at the type of information that portal users can expect to see in their listing of applications. The first column is where you will see the application name. This is a specific title which is chosen when the application is initiated. It will not be used for any other reason than to help you locate a particular application from within the listing. Choose a name for the application that will work best, one that will help you to easily identify a particular application. A simple naming convention you may wish to use is to start with the family name of the principal applicant in all capital letters, followed by their given name and their date of birth. For sponsorship agreement holders who work with constituent groups and co-sponsors, you may want to create a naming convention that includes the name of the CG or co-sponsor. Or if you already have an internal database numbering system, you may wish to use that unique number instead. If an application has been submitted, then the primary sponsor will see a link here under the application name column to download the entire application package as a zip file. In the second column, you will see the program identifier, which in this case of PSR applications, it will always show as Refugee. If, however, you were a group of 5 sponsor and had used your PR portal user account to create a family class application, this would also show up in your listing of applications with the category of family displayed. The category column will show you which type of application it is. So group of 5, community sponsor, or sponsorship agreement holder. The next column will show the date that a completed application was submitted, or if an application has been returned, a returned date time stamp will also be visible here. And the status column will only show you the progress of an application within the portal. It will not display the progress of a completed application after it's been submitted. So for an application that has been created and is still being edited, it will show as a yellow initiated bar. An application that has been submitted to IRCC will appear as a green submitted bar. And applications which have been returned will have a red returned bar. Under the Actions column, you will click on the View button to open the application. And next to that, you'll see the Delete button. Now, if you are the primary sponsor, then you can select the Delete button, and it deletes everything for that application. If you're an invited group member, however, you cannot delete the application. If you want to be removed from the application, the primary sponsor will need to do that. And if you have submitted the application and it gets returned to you, you are not able to delete that application. Now let's go back to the home page to see how a primary sponsor will initiate an application. Before the application can be generated by the system, you must identify the type of application you wish to create. Now remember, the PR portal is used for several immigration streams, so we have to identify that this is an application for private sponsorship and which type of sponsorship group, so that the correct application forms are generated by the system. So for the first drop-down item, you're going to select permanent residence, including refugee resettlement. Then the next one, you're going to choose the program, which is Refugee, and then the category, which is Private Sponsorship of Refugees Program. And in this case, we're selecting type of sponsorship group, which is Sponsorship Agreement Holder. Here's where you will enter in the custom application title. Remember, the title that you put in here is only going to show up on your application listings dashboard. It will not appear anywhere on the applications that get submitted to IRCC. This title only helps you quickly identify a particular application within your dashboard listing. Finally, click on the Continue button. Now, for the fields in this application, you will see some fields that have a red asterisk. This means that this is required information. But keep in mind, this PR portal is used by many immigration streams. So the information you're providing may be required and you may not see a red asterisk. That's why it's very important to follow the particular instruction guide for your sponsorship group type to know which information you have to provide for the application. Now, the very first time you create an application, you will be prompted to enter in the primary sponsor name. After that very first application has been created, that information gets auto inserted for you and it cannot be changed. So it's very important when completing this particular information for the primary sponsor that you insert the information correctly because it cannot be changed later on. Now, for sponsorship agreement holders, you're going to insert the name of the organization underneath the family name field. And in the given name field, you're going to leave it blank. Very important, do not insert the name of an individual here for your SAWS primary sponsor information. Once you've clicked the Continue button, you should see a green pop-up box appear, letting you know that your application was successfully started. At this point, you could log out of the portal if you wanted to, and then resume working on it at another time. This might be particularly helpful if you don't actually have all of the information for the refugee. You simply have their name and date of birth. So let's assume we actually did stop here, and now we're going to log back in and start working on the application again. So once I've logged in, as you can see, the application is now visible here in the listing. So to resume working on it again, you simply click on the View button here. So as I mentioned, after the application has been initiated, you will be directed to the Principal Applicant's profile page. So you will need to fill in the basic information for the principal applicant. And as a minimum, you will need to provide the information for the fields that have that red asterisk. So we have entered in the information for the principal applicant's profile. Scrolling down the page, we're going to move on to the mailing address information. And there's an option to select whether or not the residential address is the same as the mailing address. Of course, you need to include that information if it's not the same as the mailing address. And scrolling down, you would click on the button to add a dependent if the principal applicant had a spouse or partner or dependents information. Once you click that button, an input box will open up for you to complete. And once you have entered in the information, the Save Details button will become active. Then you will click on it to save the information. You can now see that a dependent has been added. You can also go back and edit the information if needed, or you can delete the added dependent if you made a mistake, or you could go on to add another dependent if you wish. Or you could even come back at another time to add more dependents later on. When you're finished, click the Save and Continue button. Once you have filled in this information, you may want to move on then to the Group Members page. And you would simply click on the menu item here. Now, for groups of 5, there is an indication here, like this one, to let you know that you need to add group members because for a group of 5, you have to have a minimum of 5 persons for the application. So you will see that little bell signal if not all 5 persons have been added to the application. Let's take a look at how to invite people to the application. We will begin with adding additional sponsors. And to do that, we have to be on the group members page. So when you need to add other signatories to the application, for example, if you were a group of 5, this would mean you would need to add the remaining 4 or more group members. If you're a sponsorship agreement holder, however, you may choose to invite constituent group members or perhaps co-sponsors that you are working with if they are assisting you with filling in the information for the application. But you don't have to invite any other group members. As I saw, you could be the only user who is completing the forms and uploading information. So to invite a group member, you're going to click on Invite Additional Sponsor. This will open up the section where you will insert their information. If you are a SAW who works with volunteers that are not parties to the sponsorship, but you want them to be able to assist with the application, you may wish to create a temporary group member access for them. To do so, you will want to name the group member using a standard title so it is easy to identify them in the portal. So for example, in the family name field, you might wish to enter temporary member and volunteer in the given name field. This is important so you will remember to delete the temporary group member access from the application prior to submitting it to IRCC. SAWs may also want to create a dedicated email address for your organization's volunteers, which you would use for any temporary access to the digital portal for your SAW. Remember, when you add a person as a group member here, they can fill out the forms and upload documents, but they do not have the ability to submit the application. Only the primary sponsor does. So if you're inviting a party to the sponsorship, then you would simply enter in their information and then click on the Send Invite button. Doing so will send an automated email to the person you've invited to the application. They must then follow the unique link in the email sent and log into the portal using the same email address where they received the invitation, and to use the temporary password that is provided in that email as well. Now, for some invited group members, if they had already created their own PR portal user account and you had invited them to an application, they will not see a temporary password to use in this invitation email. They will simply see a link to log in to access that particular application. Now, you can see that the person we have invited is included here. Each invited person's information will appear as separate blocks of information. Now, if you are a SAW that will be assisting groups of 5 with the PR portal, keep in mind that there will be a warning message like this if there are not at least 5 group members invited. Once the group of 5 has invited each of the required other members, this warning message will disappear. Now, if you need to remove a group member, it can be done here, but you cannot remove the person after the application has been submitted. After submission, if you need to remove a group member or if they need to be replaced, you would need to contact IRCC directly by email. You also have the ability to resend a temporary password to an invited member if they did not open the email that they had received within 30 days of being invited. The temporary password will expire after 30 days. Now, invited group members will only be able to click on the More Details button for their own block of information. They cannot access the protected details for other group members. This protected section is where any documents which contain sensitive information are to be uploaded. Only the invited person and the primary sponsor will be able to access and view documents which have been uploaded here. So as you can see for invited group members, there are several documents which can be uploaded in this section. Sponsors must closely follow the IMM 5413 SAW instruction guide to ensure that the correct required documents are uploaded here. And you'll simply need to click on the Upload button next to an identified item in this listing that you're going to provide a document for. So if you have constituent groups or co-sponsors who are parties to the application, as a minimum, you will need to upload their sponsor assessment here. And the proof of status ID document for those constituent group members or co-sponsors will need to be uploaded here as well. Now, if you are a group of 5 or a community sponsor, or if you are a SAW following Risk Management Plan C, then you would also need to upload the financial profile for any group members who are providing funds from their personal income. And you will also need to upload the Notice of Assessment document here under Proof of Funds category. Now, for group members who are not providing funds for the sponsorship, or for those whose SAW is following Plan A or B, they do not have to upload a financial profile or provide proof of funds for their personal income here. SAWs under Plan A may still choose to ask the CG or co-sponsor for these documents, however. That way, they can keep a copy on file as proof documentation in the event of a future case review by IRCC. When it comes to bank statements for funds held in trust, details of deposits, the signed and stamped letter from the bank, or statements from fundraising activities, SAWs in Plan C will upload these documents into the primary sponsor's Protected Details section under the Proof of Funds option. SAWs in Plan A or B will not need to submit these documents. However, they should keep them on file in the event a future case review occurs. And if you are a SAW that will not be inviting your constituent group reps or co-sponsors to the application, the sponsor assessments for those persons can be merged into one PDF file and uploaded here in the primary sponsor's details section. The same goes for the proof of status ID documents. Now keep in mind that there is a specific naming convention that should be used, and there are other file preparation requirements that you will need to follow before uploading documents to the portal. A closer look at the file preparation requirements, which include accepted file types, file size, file naming, and acceptable characters to use when naming the files. The types of files that are acceptable for uploading are PDF files or image files such as JPEG, JPG, or PNG, or document file types such as DOC or DOCX. The maximum size a file can be is 4 megabytes. And there will actually be a warning message in the portal if the file you are trying to upload is too big. So if you need to reduce a file size, you can use a free online website called ilovepdf.com or a similar online tool for reducing the file size of a PDF form. When uploading images, the smallest resolution size should be 420 by 540 pixels. For file naming, you must include the last name, followed by a dash, then the first name, followed by a dash, and then the document type it is, followed by a dash, and then, if necessary, an item number if you're uploading multiple files using the same document type name. Rocco has confirmed, however, that they would prefer you to merge PDFs together where you have similar document types under one document name. So merge it into one document rather than uploading separate PDF files for each document of the same type. and we will explain this further in the next slide. So the allowable characters that can be used when typing your file name are upper and lowercase letters, numbers, dashes, underscores, or a dot. And particularly for francophones. This is important because you cannot use French keyboard letters that have accents, even when it's for a person's name. Look at a case example based on this principal applicant, their spouse, and child. So, for example, if the principal applicant has some documents to include for proof of education, such as a diploma and a certificate, these documents could be saved as separate files and using file names that are the same, except they include a sequential number at the end. Or if you're able to merge these documents into one PDF file that is less than 4 megabytes in size, then Rocco would actually prefer that. When uploading photos for this family, each photo can be uploaded separately, where the file name must include the name of the person in that photo. So for example, this is how each of the photo files would be named for the PA, the spouse, and the dependent child. However, again, if you prefer, you may merge all the photos into one PDF file that is less than 4 megabytes and simply use the PA's name along with the file name of photos. Now, if you do that and merge them into one PDF document, you need to be sure that each photo has not only the front of the photo, but also the back of the photo in that file. And so if the image of the person is the first page, the back of the photo showing their name, date of birth, the date the photo was taken, and the stamp of the photo studio must be on the back of that photo. When it comes to file naming for specific forms and other documents, be sure you're using the appropriate names based on the document being uploaded. So for the Principal Applicant Schedule 2, you would include the name of the principal applicant and the title of the form. The same goes for the RSD document. Use the principal applicant's name and include RSD for the title. And the same goes for the principal applicant's declaration. If you're uploading the Undertaking document, you can use the principal applicant's name followed by Undertaking, as shown in the example here. When you're uploading specific forms or documents for individual sponsors, you must include the individual sponsor's name as well as what the document type it is. For example, the financial profiles would be named according to the sponsor it belongs to, as in this example here. And the same goes for the sponsor assessment forms or for any ID documents for proving a sponsor's Canadian status. Once you have invited the group members, if you scroll down the page, you have the option to invite the principal applicant, or you can invite a representative for the principal applicant. Of course, if the refugee doesn't have sufficient language skills or internet access, you do not have to invite them to the online application in the portal. Sponsors can select no here, but they will need to upload a PDF version of the refugee's digitally signed declaration form. We will explain more about this declaration form later on when we talk about the application page. When you invite an immigration representative who will act on behalf of the principal applicant with IRCC, that person will be sent an invitation to create a user account in the PR portal. They would then have the same level of permissions to access the online applications as the principal applicant would have had. So this means that the rep can edit and view the refugee forms, and they can also upload supporting documents and forms on behalf of the refugee. To invite a rep, you will fill in their name and email address, and you're required to identify whether they are a registered representative or not. Registered representatives are paid representatives, professionals such as an immigration lawyer or a licensed consultant. When you select the No option here, that the intended representative is not registered, then they are considered to be unpaid representatives, meaning the representative is not being paid to act on the principal applicant's behalf with IRCC, such as a family member in Canada. But regardless of being paid or unpaid, they will need to upload the use of representative form, which authorizes them to act on behalf of the principal applicant. Now keep in mind, once a rep has been invited, they cannot be removed from the application. You will need to contact IRCC by email external to the portal if there will be a change to the representative. If you select yes, that the representative is registered, then this paid representative will be sent an invitation with a link to sign in to the Immigration Representatives portal to access the principal applicant's online application. When the paid representative first creates their user account for the Immigration Reps portal, they will need to provide their membership ID, the name of their firm or company, as well as the governing body. Once they have signed in, they can edit and view the refugee's application forms, and they can also upload supporting documents and additional forms on behalf of the principal applicant. Now let's take a look at how to access the application forms and where to upload the sponsorship documents. The primary sponsor, as well as any other invited persons, can access the application to complete the online forms and upload any required documents. To access this page, you would click on the application menu item here at the top right. On the left side, you will see the quick navigation menu for this particular web page. These are simply quick links to jump to a particular section of this page. If it's the first time you're viewing this page, however, please do take time to scroll down manually and read the information provided for you. In particular, you will want to scroll to the Before You Start section, where there are links for you to access the relevant instruction guides and checklists, which you will need to refer to when completing the application forms. Now, as you can see in these instructions, you will not need to select and complete every single form that is available within this page. As we mentioned earlier, this portal is used by many other immigration stream applicants, so not all of the forms are going to be used for PSR application submissions. This is why it's very important to follow the guides and document checklist, which are linked here, to ensure you're including the correct items. Now let's click on this link menu button to jump to the IMM 008 generic application section. In this section of the page, you can see that the generic application form falls under the heading Digital Forms for Sponsorship Agreement Holders. In this initial release of the PR portal, only the principal applicant's generic application and Schedule A are available to complete online from within the portal. Below that section, you will see the PDF form section, which contains the required undertaking form for your particular sponsorship group type, as well as the Refugee Schedule 2 form. The sponsors forms and the Schedule 2 can be downloaded from the provided links below the form number. These forms are to be completed offline, meaning you do not need to be logged into the portal to complete them. When these PDF forms have been completed and signed, and the file has been saved according to the correct size and naming convention, simply click on the button to upload the undertaking form, and click here to upload the principal applicant's Schedule 2. If there are any dependents over 18, You will need to click this button again to upload their schedule too as well. Keep in mind that you can only upload a maximum of 3 files here. So if you have more than 3 persons whose schedules you are trying to add and upload to this portal, then it is recommended that you merge these files together into one file for the entire family. Now let's take a look at the online version of the generic application. You'll first see some information to read before proceeding to the form. Be sure to click on the link for the instruction guide, which will guide you in how to complete this form. You should also have copies of supporting documents for the refugee family. For example, passports or national identity documents, or the RSD document, if you have them, because you will need to fill in their personal information based on the information in those documents. Then click on the Continue button. On the left side is a new menu tree, which will show you which section of the online generic application you are working on. You will not be able to navigate to the next section until all of the required fields have been entered and saved. On this section of the form, you will notice that the online version does not indicate that this particular question is a required field. This does not mean that you can leave it blank. Remember, the generic application form is used by several other immigration streams, and some of them do not have to complete this field. But for private sponsorship of refugee applicants, it must be filled out, or it will be returned by IRCC. You should always follow the guide when completing this form so you won't omit any fields that are required for PSR applications. When you have entered in any fields with the red asterisk, you can click on the Save and Continue button to proceed. You can certainly go back in again at a later time to fill in the remaining fields that are necessary for PSR applications. Remember to always follow the instruction guide when completing the application forms for the refugee. Now let's briefly talk about the context section of the IMM 008 form. This is where all of the contact information for the principal applicant is filled out. Make note when you scroll to the bottom. The question is asking if the principal applicant wants to use the same email address that they use to log in the portal. This question response is dependent upon who's logged in and making the selection. If it's the refugee, then they could actually select yes, and the email address used by them to log in the portal will be auto-inserted into the form. However, if it is a sponsor or volunteer or immigration rep that is logged into the portal and answering this question, then that person must select the no option here and then type in the correct email address for the principal applicant. This is important to remember because this is the only place where the principal applicant's email address can be provided to IRCC for the online IMM 008 form. Once all of the contact details have been entered for this section, you can click to save and continue. When you have navigated through each of these sections and completed all of the fields with the red asterisk, you will see a green check mark next to each menu item. Keep in mind again, this does not mean that you have filled in all of the required information within each of these sections. It simply means that the fields with the red asterisk have been entered and saved. When you get to the Dependents section, it is important to read the information displayed here. In particular, you will need to click on the link here to open the principal applicant's profile page if you have not yet added their spouse or partner or dependents to the application. You must do this first before moving on to complete the personal details for each dependent, which will be listed here after they've been added to the principal applicant's profile page. Once you've completed all of the personal details for each dependent, a completed status will be displayed. If you do not see the completed bar and you are certain that the form has been completed correctly. A known system glitch may be happening. So to fix that, you may need to insert a 0 into the UCI field of the forms. And then the button here will become visible for you to click on, which will take you back to the main navigation page for the application. You will now see a green check mark next to the IMM 008 menu item. Keep in mind that this is not an indication that you've filled in all of the necessary information for a PSR application. It is only an indication that the fields with a red asterisk have been completed for the generic application. It will be important for the primary sponsor for the SAW to go through each of these forms and verify that they have been filled in correctly with the required information as explained in each of the instruction guides. Now let's take a quick look at the additional application forms section. You will have the option to search for and add additional forms here. Most of the forms in this drop-down list are for other immigration streams. The ones that are relevant to the PSR program applicants are the optional forms, such as the use of representative and the appointment of a representative in the community of settlement. There's also a parental consent declaration form that may be helpful and could be provided for cases where the principal applicant is divorced and wants to bring their child to live in Canada. Now let's move on to the supporting documents section. For sponsorship agreement holders, the only required document to be uploaded as a supporting document is the photos of the refugee applicants. Be sure that you are uploading photos which were taken according to the photo specifications document, and which will include the name, date of birth of the person in the photo, as well as the name and address of the photo studio and the date the photo was taken. Select the Additional Supporting Documents menu if the refugee applicant has more supporting documents to be included with the application. You can search for the document type here, and if you want to quickly locate a particular title, you can type the first letter of the title in the search field. I have pre-populated this application with the various document titles that may be used for the PA's additional supporting documents. As I scroll down, you can see that there are quite a few that you can choose from. When searching through the available document titles within the drop-down list, please be aware that many of the options available are only to be used for other immigration streams. In particular, you should not use the title option called Translations and Affidavit. Instead, you are expected to include the translation of documents in the same PDF file as the original document. So for example, if the principal applicant has a police report to upload, you would select the title option called Police Report, and then upload a PDF document that includes both the report and the translation together in that one file. The file naming convention for this PDF document, you would need to have the principal applicant's family name, a dash, the given name, a dash, followed by the title, Police Report. Now let's go to the last section, the principal applicant's declaration. If the principal applicant was not invited to the application previously, you will need to download a PDF version of the consents and declaration form for the principal applicant to sign. If you do not see the link here to download the form and the upload button is grayed out, this is a good indication that you left the toggle option on yes instead of no within the group members page. Click here to access the group members page. Toggle this option to no, and then when you go back to the application, you should see the link to download the form, and the upload button will become active. If, however, you had opted to invite the principal applicant, when you return to the declaration section, there will be a view button for the primary sponsor to check to see if the principal applicant's electronic signature has been completed. Keep in mind that only the refugee can complete and electronically sign their declaration. Sponsors or immigration reps cannot sign on behalf of the principal applicant. So when the refugee logs into their account, they will see a Start button to access their consents and declaration form. When this online version of the form opens, the principal applicant will read the information here and then click on their preferred response options to these questions. Then they will need to scroll down and continue to read all of the information in this declaration so they understand what they are agreeing to. In order to give their consent, they will need to electronically sign the declaration by typing in their name into the field here. Then they will scroll down where they will see the blue button is now active, which they can click on to continue.
As the primary sponsor, you can click on the View button to verify that the principal applicant has signed their declaration, and
you can scroll down to see where the application submission button is located. As you can see, the button is grayed out because we haven't finished everything yet that needs to be done. Below the button, you can see warning messages which indicate what the sponsors need to complete before the application can be submitted. Remember that only the primary sponsor or a paid immigration rep for the sponsors may submit completed applications. Before they do so, the primary sponsor will need to review the whole application to ensure nothing is missing, paying particular attention to ensure that all required information has been included in the online digital forms, as well as reviewing all of the uploaded forms and documents to verify that the application is complete. PSR applicants can disregard the point here to include proof you paid your fees. This is a reminder for other immigration streams. PSR applications do not have a fee. Once every warning message has been addressed, the Submit button will become active. If the primary sponsor is satisfied that everything is in order, they can click the button to submit the application to IRCC. Once an application has been submitted, it can no longer be edited within the portal. An exception to this restriction, however, will occur when IRCC finds that the application is incomplete. In this case, the application will become unlocked again in the portal, but only for the primary sponsor to make the necessary corrections. Rocco will send an email externally to the primary sponsor with an explanation of what is missing. The principal applicant will need to re-sign their declaration if the changes required are related to their portion of the application. Keep in mind that there is no longer going to be a fixed period of time by which you will need to resubmit the application via the portal. This is because the processing time will not begin until a complete application is received by Rocco. So, if the sponsor waits 30 days to resubmit the corrected application, the processing date timestamp for placing the application in the queue for processing will not be until that later time frame. The application submission date will be according to the most recent submission date. It will not be backtracked to the date of first submission. Now let's take a look at what you can expect to receive in an automated email. The PR portal will send out automated emails following certain user actions. The first auto email will be sent out to the primary sponsor who initiates the application. They will be the only one to receive this notification informing them that the application has been started in the portal. If the principal applicant has been invited to the online portal, then they will receive an email notification with a unique link inviting them to log in to the portal. The same goes for other sponsorship group members. They will each receive an automated email with a unique link to log into the portal. If there is an immigration rep for the PA, so for example, an unpaid rep, They will also need to be invited and will receive an email notification with a unique link to log into the portal. If, however, it was a paid immigration rep who has initiated the application as a representative of the sponsorship group, then they are required to invite the primary sponsor when they initiate the application. So the sponsor will get an invitation notifying them they have been added to the application. In this case, the primary sponsor has the option to access the portal to view or edit the application. This is not necessary, however, as the sponsor may just want to leave it up to their paid representative to solely access the portal to complete the application on their behalf. The key reason the sponsor needs to be invited to the application is so that they will receive the auto email notifications from the portal. When a group member is removed, the primary sponsor or paid rep for the group and all invited persons are notified. Now, when we're talking about removing a group member, this is within the PR portal by the primary sponsor before an application is submitted, because you can't remove a group member after the application was submitted. When an application does get submitted, the primary sponsor or the paid rep for the group and all invited persons are notified. When an application has been screened by an officer at IRCC and is returned as incomplete, only the primary sponsor or the paid rep for the group will be notified by an automated notification email from the PR portal. And then another email will be received from Rocco with details about possible reasons for return. Please note that once a submitted application is received and considered complete, an acknowledgement of receipt email will be sent to all group members from the Rocco email account and will include the G number. All other correspondence after this point will be done external to the portal. So this means that the process for sending or receiving updates on the application will remain the same as before the portal was launched. You will need to send a request through the web form for IRCC, or you can log into the ECAS web page to see the progress of the application. So what cannot be submitted to IRCC via the PR portal? Blended Visa Office referred applications. You will submit these via email to Rocco external from the PR portal. The same goes for joint assistance sponsorship applications. And after an application has been submitted to IRCC, you cannot add a dependent via the PR portal. You must contact IRCC external to the portal. The same goes for when you need to replace a group member or to add an immigration representative. You will contact IRCC external to the portal. And you may alternatively use IRCC's web form for making these changes to an application or for any other updates on the sponsorship. If you have more questions after you have watched this video and subsequent videos that we have posted on the RSTP YouTube channel, feel free to contact our helpline or your local RSTP trainer.